The 9th generation of Pokemon was a pretty big disappointment. I had fun playing Pokemon Violet, but very few new Pokemon designs hit the spot for me. And unfortunately, if you can't quite connect with your team, it makes it that much harder to enjoy your time in the Pokemon world. The starters were a great set. They all have unique secondary types, their signature moves are powerful and fun to use, and they offer fantastic variety in their body types and personalities. But individually, they aren't as strong. They are better than Gen 8, but that's not saying much. Sprigatito evolves into Floragato, easily one of the best Pokemon designs of the entire generation. If this wasn't a starter and Floragato didn't evolve, I'd be thrilled with this pair. But it does evolve again into Meowscarada, an exaggerated Floragato. It's still pretty good, and I was satisfied with my choice of starter, but it's a step down.
Wasn't really your choice.
No, I guess not. Fuecoco goes into its awkward teenage phase when it evolves into Crocalor and never entirely comes out of it. Skeledirge is our first starter in a long time that doesn't feel humanoid at all, which I sincerely appreciate, but the design is oddly boxy, full of straight lines. The flame bird that hatches from its head is a neat idea, but it doesn't feel well integrated enough with the rest of the design. Quaxly is pretty cute, but it was the least exciting starter to me, and Quaxwell doesn't really change that. I don't find Quaquaval that exciting either, but I think its design would be pretty decent if only it would sit still for a moment. Hard to appreciate the details of its design when it's constantly dancing like it's Carnaval at the Sambódromo. But even though all starter families have flaws, I think they're okay. Overall, they are among the better Pokemon designs of the generation, because there were a lot of duds and missed opportunities. Pokemon like Oinkologne, Mabostiff, and Squawkabilly don't have enough of the Pokemon spice to make their designs enjoyable. They might as well be Looney Tunes characters. There is a surprising number of Gen 9 Pokemon that, even 3 months later, still don't feel like Pokemon. Bombardier, Orthworm, Dondozo, Tatsugiri, Goldango all feel like they would be more at home in a different franchise. I don't particularly like any of those, but there are ones that I do like that nonetheless don't feel like Pokemon. Glimmet and Glimmora look exceptionally alien and unnatural. It just happens to be in a way that I find appealing. Or Charcadet and its evolutions. All three look very cool, and Cerulege had a permanent spot on my team. They're all too humanoid and artificial to look like Pokemon. They're great character designs, but not great Pokemon designs. Some Pokemon feel awkward, like how Houndstone's headstone looks tacked on as an afterthought. Some feel uninspired, like Spidops. I don't even have something special to comment on. Several Pokemon that seemed promising never delivered, either because they didn't evolve, like Flamigo, or because their evolution didn't do them any favors. Pawmi is adorable, but it only gets bigger and spikier. It doesn't change enough to be exciting. Way too many Pokemon that I liked lost their charm as they evolved. Pokemon like Arctibax, Varoom, Finizen, and Bramblin feel wasted by their final stages. Tandemaus evolves into more Tandemaus. Dunsparce evolves into more Dunsparce. Yes, I get the joke, it's the archetypal dud. Just don't think that's funny. The joke might have landed better if Dunsparce was the only evolution dud, but it isn't. Far from it. To be fair, there are a bunch of okay Pokemon. They have their strengths and exciting points about their design, but just don't appeal to me personally. Pokemon like Kilowattrel, Cloth, Arboliva, or Cetitan. Even a lot of the cross-generational callbacks, which are usually Pokemon that I find pretty exciting, this time fall short. Paldean Tauros combat breed is barely a spin on Tauros at all, while the other breeds, which are minimally more interesting, are incredibly rare. I did not find a single wild Aqua breed in 2 whole playthroughs of Violet. I like both Annihilape and Farigiraf, both held spots on my team rotation, but neither feels perfect. Annihilape still feels a bit bland, while Farigiraf doesn't quite capture the charm of Girafarig. Then there's Kingambit, which is pretty cool, but I already thought Bisharp was fantastic, so giving it an evolution just feels like an exaggeration. And I mean, look at that mustache. Even the fresh, exciting ideas that Scarlet and Violet introduced don't live up to their potential. For example, convergent evolution could be such a cool concept in Pokemon, but instead it's used for what feels like jokes. Wiglet and Wugtrio are just, hey, what if we took the exact same approach as Diglett and Dugtrio, but made them eels instead of moles? Eh? Toadscool looks like it might as well have been picked up out of the water, painted in an off-putting flesh color, and forced to stand on its tentacles. It looks awkward and unnatural, like another shot at a joke that failed to land. I really hate Toadscool. But at least Toedscruel gets closer to the convergent evolution ideal. The tentacles look more natural, it looks more different from Tentacruel, and the head is mushroomy enough to look like a mushroom monster that just happens to be generally Tentacruel shaped. Of course, this is just my opinion. This is all based on my preferences and my conception of what a Pokemon looks like and what a Pokemon should be. My opinion is not universal and probably doesn't reflect most of the Pokemon community. That's why I want to take a moment to tell you about the sponsor of this video, Rate Pokemon. It's a project I'm launching. Essentially, I want to turn Pokemon designs into data to make it easier to objectively compare different groups of Pokemon, like generations or legendaries versus mythicals or anything really. And to do that, I want to harness you, the Pokemon community, and your opinions on each Pokemon design. Click the link in the description or go to ratepkmn.com. You'll be presented with a random Pokemon design and asked to rate it on several different factors, like how complex, humanoid, or cute the design is. When you submit, you'll see how your ratings compare to previous raters before you, and then you can generate another Pokemon and rate as many as you feel like. The data collected from this project is openly available, and we'll do some heavy-duty data analysis later on. The more people participate, the better the dataset will be, so head to ratepkmn.com or click the link in the description to get started, and then share it with your friends. I am very disappointed by this generation of Pokemon, but that doesn't mean that there are no Pokemon I really love. It's just that this section is short enough that I could turn it into a top 5 video. So, here are my top 5 Pokemon introduced in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Number 5, Tinkaton. It is simple, unique, and a fantastic combination of cute and cool. Tinkaton is a perfect Pokemon design, and it only doesn't end up higher on this list because it isn't quite the kind of Pokemon that I prefer. Number 4, Grafaiai. The evolution from Shroodle into Grafaiai is completely unexpected, and it caught me off guard at first. But once I saw it moving in battle and existing in the wild, it really grew on me. It's animalistic, it has unique design elements, and you can see its effects on its environment. I only wish that this was a middle stage and would evolve into something more like a Luxray or an Obstagoon, something that feels imposing. Number 3, Lokix. Nimble is already an adorable little cricket to start with, but then it evolves into a badass Kamen Rider Grasshopper. I'm delighted to continue the trend of having an awesome bug on my team every generation since Generation 7. Number 2, Clodsire. I don't usually go for the silly looking Pokemon, but Clodsire is the perfect execution of that. It is simple, it has a lovable face, and walks around funny, but it also has a cool, unexpected aspect to its design that gives it that so important element of surprise. Clodsire is also based on basically a real-world Pokemon called the Iberian Newt. Check it out in this video from Bizarre Beasts. Number 1, Garganacl. Nacli felt too simple. It doesn't have something to set it apart from other Rockmon besides being cubic. Knucklestack at least develops into a 4-legged creature, which is a more notable change than many evolutions this gen, but it looks too much like something out of Minecraft for me to like. But Garganacl, it still has a lot of straight lines, but it's no longer just a bunch of cubes put together, so it doesn't look Minecrafty anymore. The salt crystals now form an entire ziggurat, giving it something unique and memorable that sets it apart. And the layered sediment and humanoid body plan make it look like a rock giant, like it could have just lifted itself out of the ground to start walking around. So even though it is made of minerals, It feels like a biological creature. Garganacl is among the best evolutionary glow-ups in the franchise, and the best Gen 9 Pokemon. Wait a second, I haven't even mentioned the Paradox Pokemon or the Ruinous Treasures yet. Well, that's because I'm doing the same thing Game Freak did and putting all the best Pokemon designs at the end of the game where they're probably not going to get a chance to shine, even if you put them on your team. To be honest, I have very mixed feelings about the Paradox Pokemon. I love the concept of past and future relatives of modern Pokemon and see a lot of potential in that idea, but what Game Freak actually did with it falls flat. Both sets of Paradox Pokemon are incredibly homogeneous. Maybe there is some lore reason why they look so similar that we'll find out eventually, but even if that's the case, the potential of this concept feels wasted. And yet, I still ended up liking a few of these Pokemon designs, especially from the past to the future ones, not so much. I have never been a fan of robotic Pokemon, and not only are all future Paradoxes robotic, they're all robotic in the same way. They all have shiny chrome bits, matte black bits, and glowy LED bits. And they don't look that different from their modern counterparts. Iron Bundle, Jugulis, or Thorns add nothing new besides robo powers. Iron Leaves doesn't either, but seeing it prance around like Bambi redeems the design a little bit. Ultimately, they don't just look robotic, they look manufactured. They even have similar names, almost like they're all products from the same company. I think it would have been much more interesting to explore the Darwinian evolution of Pokemon going into the future. Iron Valiant at least merges elements from two very closely related, but nonetheless different Pokemon, so that's something. The past Paradox have the advantage of not being robotic. Simply by being animalistic, they win a few points in my book. The design approach still feels kind of one note. They all take the modern Pokemon and make it wilder, but at least they do that in different ways, with more hair, bigger fangs, even adding limbs or changing how they're used. I don't particularly like Brute Bonnet or Sandy Shocks, but other than that, I think they're all individually very successful. Funny enough, I don't like Volcarona that much, but I think both of its relatives are the best from the original sets. I see a lot of outstanding elements to Volcarona, but mostly I think the wings are too small and awkwardly shaped compared to the enormous body. Iron Moth and Slitherwing redesigned Volcarona in very different ways, yet both find solutions to what I don't like about the original. Iron Moth makes it sleeker, and detaching the wings weirdly makes it more believable. It's probably my favorite of all robotic Pokemon. And Slitherwing leans into the bulky, fluffy aesthetic and gives up on flying altogether. I only wish it was a dragon type instead of a fighting type. Otherwise, it's perfect. But Walking Wake is my favorite Paradox Pokemon so far because it takes the most radical approach. It has the most significant change in body shape while still being very obviously related to Suicune, which, if these really are Pokemon from the past, proves that Pokemon did not evolve in the same way that animals of our world did. And with that, it dares to challenge, if not yet wholly dismantle, the fanbase's broad acceptance of the Burn Tower legend. It also helps that I love Suicune. But the best Pokemon designs in the entire game are the Ruinous Treasures. All four incorporate their items in unexpected ways that still feel natural. I never would have thought of turning a bowl into antlers, but it seems almost obvious when I see it on Ting Lu. Even though the vessel is big and heavy, Ting Lu is built to support it, as if the earth itself rose up to carry the weight. And that's another thing I love. Their lore says that they were born of powerful negative feelings around these items, covering themselves in something to become a Pokemon. Chi-Yu, for example, is the envy accumulated within curved beads that sparked multiple conflicts, clad itself in fire, and became a Pokemon. And that's exactly what they look like. Chi-Yu is very clearly not a fiery fish, but a living ball of fire in the shape of a fish. The others are a bit more subtle, but no different. Wo-Chien is a living pile of leaves that coalesced around the tablets into the shape of a snail. All of its elements are beautifully incorporated. It is probably the single best Pokemon design of the entire generation. But my absolute favorite is Chien-Pao, a pile of snow in the shape of a weasel, snow leopard, Smilodon combo. I was a bit wary of it when I saw the silhouette in the Pokedex, thinking it looked too stretched out. But seeing it out in the world, moving, pouncing, and roaring, with little bits of snow falling from the tail, there's no way I could not love it.
Yeah, I knew you'd like him.
The biggest disappointment with Gen 9 Pokemon is not that I find so many of them subpar. It's that most of the exceptional, exciting Pokemon designs are extremely late game Pokemon. By the time you meet them, you already have your team sorted. You've already bonded with your Pokemon to the extent that you don't want to put them away, even if these new designs are better. It's perfectly fine and understandable for the late game Pokemon to be special and well designed. But the distribution of Pokemon I like being so heavily weighted toward the late game seriously diminished the enjoyment I could get for the most important part of the game. It feels like treating Pokemon as collectibles only. As if just obtaining the cool rare Pokemon is enough for me to like it. There is something to that, but that's not what makes Pokemon special. Pokemon become special through the memories we create with them, the moments of tension and triumph and surprise. Yes, they need to look at least somewhat appealing for me to give it a chance, but without the memories, they are little more than Pokedex filler. When the most interesting Pokemon only appear at the end of the game, I have little opportunity to make those memories. I sincerely hope that you had a better experience with the Pokemon designs than I did. Let me know in the comments which Pokemon were your favorites and why. Especially if you love one that I dislike. What about it captured your attention? I'm really interested to hear. For those wondering, I will write a full review of Scarlet and Violet, but now that we know for sure that DLC is coming, and that it appears to expand on the story of Area Zero, I decided to wait until I can play the expanded game. My review probably won't be out until the end of the year or early next year. In the meantime, I thought it would be a good idea to make this video exploring my experience with the Gen 9 Pokemon. I do also want to explore the creature design trends from this generation eventually, but I'll leave that for when we have more data from your ratings. So please head to ratepkmn.com or click the link in the description to contribute to this large-scale, long-term project. Thank you for watching, and of course, a huge thank you to all of the Libros who support me financially. I love you all, and I'll see you in the next chapter. Why are you being creepy? Oh, is it creepy to say I love my patrons?